Hey there, welcome to Grand Point Church. Our mission is to help as many people as possible take their next steps to find and follow Jesus. Thanks for tuning into the message.
Thank you, Jen and Caressa. We truly value our partnership with Network Ministries, and I too want to thank you for your service and your contribution to that. We hope that can continue. Excited about Serve Day. I've been so looking forward to this, and hopefully this becomes an annual for us, and we'll let you know how you can be a part of that. Before I talk more about Serve Day, though, let me tell you what's happening next weekend. Next weekend is the beginning of a new message series called The Game of Kings. We're now less than 10 weeks away from a presidential election. And there are some of you and many people who are like, it has to go this way. You've already made up your mind. This is the candidate. Others of you are saying, this is the candidate over here. And in between, there's maybe 80% of us who are like, which way do we go? I received an email from someone from the congregation recently that said, I'm so confused on this election. And some of you who are over here and who are over here are not. You're like, how can you be a Christian and vote for this person while in the same way, there are those over here who say, how can you be a Christian and vote for that person? All I'm saying is there is the potential right now for some unbiblical divisions within the church, and maybe even the possibility or the potential to defame the name of Christ in this. So here's what we're doing. We're starting a brand new message series called The Game of Kings. And it is specifically designed to help you think biblically about the upcoming election and to help you think biblically about our mission as a church in the midst of it. We do not need to be divided. We do not need to separate. We do not need to resort to name calling. That's not at all what God would call us to do and be. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to begin in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, and go all the way through Matthew chapter 7. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to do a message series that's already set in a political environment and just walk through that, and I think it'll be great for all of us. Listen, I would say to you, you don't want to miss the first message in the series, because that's pretty much going to set up the tempo for the game plan. So, Game of Kings, starting next Sunday. Now, back to Serve Day. I'm so excited about Serve Day, and what I'd like to do today is just talk to you about that. I want you to kind of picture this as a locker room talk. I'm going to be the coach, and we're about to send you out. We're sending you out into the field and serve. So, picture me as your coach this morning, and this is a locker room talk. The main thing that I want to do today, the one goal that I have in this message today, is to motivate you to what Christianity should look like, and the one thing that is on the heart of the one that we serve. So, just like in the locker room, I need you to get all fired up. I'm telling you, I preach better if you get fired up out there. I'll preach faster if you get fired up, which means we're going to get out of here sooner, right? You're ready to go. I've entitled my message, The GOAT. That's it, The GOAT. You know this, greatest of all time. You know this in the world of athletes. Whenever there's an athlete that's doing something beyond everyone else, you can kind of consider them the GOAT, right? The debate begins. Is this the greatest person of all time? So my introduction to professional sports came back in the early 70s. I'll date myself here, no problem with that, but it was with the Philadelphia Phillies. I listened to them on the radio. I mean, that was my go-to team. I was an avid Phillies fan. And to me, the GOAT is Mike Schmidt, right? Mike Schmidt. So there were other great players. I mean, there was Steve Carlton, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, and all those other. But to me, in baseball, the GOAT is still Schmitty. Now, when it comes to golf, some of you would say the GOAT is the Golden Bear, Jack Nicklaus. Others of you might be like, no, it's Tiger Woods, the greatest of all time. When it comes to basketball, the GOAT is either LeBron or Michael Jordan, depending where you fall, right? So everyone has this idea of who is the greatest of all times. The one thing I want you to know today is this. The desire inside of everyone, there is a desire inside of everyone to achieve some level of greatness. We want our lives to, we want like our lives and what we do to count for something. We want them to be significant. We don't want to come to the end of life and actually realize that we've not really done anything or that we've reached any level of greatness. And I think that desire is okay. In fact, I believe it's created by God. God created us for greatness. The problem is how we define greatness. So in our time together this morning, I want to make sure that we define greatness as it's defined in the Bible. And to do that, I'm going to show you a verse out of Mark chapter 10, where Jesus is coming to the end of his ministry, and his disciples are beginning to figure out that he is going to be this king. And so they start jockeying for positions in his kingdom. Now, you know there were 12 disciples, and 2 of those, James and John, sneak away from the other 12. 2 of these guys come to Jesus, and they say in Mark chapter 10, verse 35, "Teacher," watch this. These guys are so human. They come to Jesus, and they say, "Hey, Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." Right? Isn't that human nature? Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Jesus played right along with it, and he said, "Well, what do you want me to do for you?" And they said, "Lord, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left when you come into glory." You see, they're jockeying for greatness. They're trying to get better positions than the other disciples. They're trying to climb their way to the top of the greatness ladder. Now, verse 41 says, like word gets around. Verse 41, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. You know why? Because they also wanted those seats. They also wanted greatness. And Jesus did something with them that I want to do with you this morning. Verse 42, Jesus called them all together. So here we are, video venue, online, in-house. We're all together this morning. And I want you to see what Jesus did with them because it's so important that we get the same message. So Jesus called them together and he said, now, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles, right? Those who are outside of our Christian camp, right? Those people out there, the rulers of the Gentiles, they lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. In other words, hey, other people use their positions and they use their authorities for personal gain and for position. And then Jesus turns to his disciples, he looks them right in the eye and he says, not so with you. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your what? Servant. Must be your servant. And whoever wants to become first must be slave at all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. What Jesus just did was he modeled a principle that honestly, we kind of understand in today's society. We understand what it means to serve because we know the suffering servant. We know what Jesus did. We understand his service. But in this particular time in history, they would not have understood that at all. No one would have faith in a God who would make you under someone rather than over them. So Jesus comes along and he's like, no, we're going to do greatness a little bit differently. We're going to do greatness differently than the rest of the world does. You know, one thing I love about Serve Day, this coming Saturday, is that we're saying with our actions, we are not just locked inside the walls of this church. We are not just this big church on the point that loves to gather here, and at Shippensburg and at Greencastle and just hang out with each other because we kind of like this. Now we do that, and that is so important. I love the gathering here this morning, but in essence, we're saying no. We do not exist just for ourselves. We also exist for our community. We exist for those outside of our walls. We exist for the poor. We exist for the broken. We exist for the hurting outside. We even exist, if you know anything about Grand Point, we exist for those across the seas in Bangladesh and India and Brazil and Haiti. We exist for those outside the wall. And what I also love about Saturday is that it's not only the projects and the work that we get to do, but it's all about the message that we get to share. And that message is that we are for you. We are for our community. And to prove that this was actually a big deal for Jesus, one of the last things that he did before he went to the cross was something that's very significant. I got to tell you about this. Most of you heard this before, but it's worth being reminded of. Maybe some of you have never heard this story, and it is worth hearing for the first time. So here's Jesus. The night before he went to the cross, he's at what we call the Passover feast. Right? Passover was a Jewish festival that people would be gathered to annually, and they would come to this place and they would have this dinner together. There was the Passover feast or the Passover supper, and Jesus and all of his disciples were invited to the Passover dinner. Now, it was customary for the host of a dinner to wash the feet of the guests when they came into the room. That was part of their connections team, right? Somebody was appointed to wash the feet because they traveled in sandals, they traveled on dirt roads, and their feet were dirty. So when they come into the room, the host would wash them. So here we are on the Passover. People are coming into the room, right? They've been invited by this host to come into the room, and there's no one there washing their feet. Now the chatter begins, right? The people are coming into the room like, where's the foot washer? Somebody forgot to call the foot washer. I have a theory. I think he was watching the game, and it was delayed like 2 hours and 19 minutes, and he forgot to come back. But for whatever reason, there was no foot washer. And people began chattering. Now, imagine 24 feet around this table. This is not going to be good. But they all gather around the table. The hosts are all seated. The table was set, and the dinner was about to be served. And then the honored guest, Jesus, did the unthinkable. Pushed back from the table. It says he took off his outer garment, wrapped a towel around his waist, went over to the entrance of the building where there was a basin of water, picked up that basin of water, and went around the whole way around the table and began to wash the feet of the guest. Now the chatter changed. Now it's like, he shouldn't be doing this. Maybe one of us should have done this, but he shouldn't be doing this. He's the honored guest. And when he came to Peter, Peter's like, no, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet. You're not going to do this. You are the guest of honor. And Jesus looked right at Peter and he says, Peter, if you do not let me wash your feet, listen, we cannot be partners. He said it this way. He said, I have no part with you. You do not understand what I'm doing. Jesus completed the foot washing, washed all of the feet, took the towel off, put the basin away, and then sat down at the table. Now he had everyone's attention. And he said, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Now we read that, or we hear that, and we're like, yeah, of course. That's what I want to do. I want to be a servant. I want to do what Jesus did. I want to have that same kind of attitude. I know that's what I ought to do. That's what Christ followers do. It's a Christian thing to do, and so I'll do it. I might not even feel like doing this, but I'm going to serve because that's what Jesus wants me to do, and it's going to help someone else. We'll wake up Saturday morning. We may not all feel like getting out of bed and going to our designated places, but we're going to do it because that's what we've committed to do. And we know that it's going to help them. Furthermore, Jesus said, whoever wants to become great must be a servant of others. But listen, I want you to know that greatness does not just happen in the eyes of God. Greatness also happens in your own heart when you serve. In other words, when you serve, you're not just doing it for the person being served. You will also have this sense of godly greatness in your own heart. Look what Jesus says in John chapter 13, verse 17. He's like, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So here's the question I want to answer for you this morning, and that is, what does God's greatest look like? So he's talking about being great. Who are the greatest? Who is the greatest of all time? Who's the GOAT? Here's what I want you to see. In Jesus' economy, what does greatness look like? Now, if you're a note taker, I want you to jot down 4 things. If you're not a note taker, jot them down anyway. In your memory, in your heart somewhere. I want you to remember this. because this is all about what makes you great. These are the greatest. Jesus would say this: God's greatest puts service over status. Service over status. When you go into the room, you're not thinking about who's in charge. You're not thinking about who's the boss, who has the title, or who's at the top. No, when you go into the room, you're not thinking about your status in the room, but you're thinking about your service in the room. Service over status. It doesn't matter what your salary is. It doesn't matter how long you've been there. It doesn't matter if you're the president, the manager, the dad, or the mom, or the pastor. Your greatness is measured by your service and not your status. There's a verse in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. I love this. It puts it all in perspective, kind of gives us the attitude of Jesus. And the writer says, do nothing at all out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but looking to the interest of others. See, left to ourselves, we'll always gravitate towards selfishness. So it requires this conscious effort to put the interest of others above ourselves. See, it's walking into the office. It's walking into the classroom. It's walking into the kitchen, walking into the dorm room. It's walking into the church, into the room thinking, how can I encourage someone today? How can I make their day better? How can I serve them? I encourage you to do that because it really makes a difference. And it puts you in a place of looking. It puts you in a place of searching out someone who's sitting alone, someone who's kind of looking like maybe they're having a bad day. Penny and I pray this prayer every time before we enter a worship service. Lord, just show us someone today that needs a handshake, someone that needs a smile, someone that needs a contact. And then we share our stories on the way home because God ultimately does that. I encourage you to do the same because it's a great way to put service over status. How can I serve other people? Greatness puts service over status. Number 2, God's greatest puts character over convenience. This means that I do things because it's the right thing to do, not simply because I feel like doing it. I don't know if you knew this or not, but there are many people who actually believe that God just wants them to be happy. I hear it a lot. God just wants me to be happy. So, therefore, our conclusion is everything that makes me happy must be okay because God wants me to be happy. I don't want to spoil your happiness journey, but can I just say something that I believe is the truth? Your greatest happiness is never, never, never achieved by what you want to do. Your greatest happiness is always, always, always achieved by doing what God wants you to do. There's often a difference. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? I'm going to read this. Some of us know at least that title. We've heard about this guy. Maybe we don't know the story, but let me share it with you from the Message. Luke chapter 10 says there was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Well, luckily, there was a priest on his way down the same road. But when he saw him, he angled to the other side. Then a Levite religious man also showed up. He also avoided the injured man. Third guy comes along. He's the Samaritan. He's coming down the road, and it says, when he saw the man's condition. Can I tell you today, you will never see humanity's commission if you angle away from them or if you avoid them. The only way that you can see is when you approach them. If you're angling away from service, if you're avoiding service, you'll never, never see the needs of people. I guarantee you when we go out on Saturday morning, we're going to see some needs in our community that we have never seen before and would never see if we angle away or avoid the service opportunities. You will discover that there are needs out there only when you see them. The first man angled away. The second man avoided. The third man saw. And look what happens when he saw. It says, when he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfected and bandaged his wounds. Then he lifted him up on his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of him. If his bill is actually more than this, put it on my bill, and I'll pay you on my way back." How much of that was convenient? None of it. Cost him time. Cost him effort. He was delayed a day from wherever he was going because it says he stayed overnight with him. The next day, all of this was convenient. He could have threw his back out, helping this guy up on his donkey. It cost him money. None of it was convenient. But after this story, and Jesus tells this story, and he says to this religious leader who's asking Jesus, "What do you think? Which of these 3 became a neighbor attacked by the robbers, to the man attacked by the robbers?" And the religious scholar said, "Well, obviously, the one who treated him kindly." And then Jesus said, "Go and do the same." Go and do the same. In God's economy, greatness is not just doing what's convenient. It's doing what is the right thing to do. We know the right thing to do. God's Spirit prompts us to do that. God, forgive us if we angle or if we avoid, because it's only when we see that we can truly serve. God is much more interested in your character than he is in your convenience. Number 3, God's greatest puts we over me. Puts we over me. See, no longer am I just thinking about what I can do. I'm thinking about what we can do together. You can always do more and usually do it better together. In the book of Acts, chapter 2, God puts his plan to rescue the world into motion. This is awesome. I love this. He puts into motion his plan to change the world, and he establishes the church. The church. It's the community, the group of people that come together. He knew that the best way to influence the world was to do it through the power of numbers. And so in Acts chapter 2, God pours out his Spirit on the people. 3,000 people get saved, and look what happens the very next day. The very next day, Acts chapter 2, verse 44, it says, all the believers were together, and they had everything in common. They sold property. They sold possessions to anyone who had a need. They chose we instead of me. Today, it's no secret, we live in a very individualistic culture. Society, it's about us. We have individual financial accounts and individual investment accounts, individual retirement accounts. It's all and listen, there's nothing wrong with that unless it creates a life of me rather than we. Yesterday morning, I was cycling with the Grand Point cycling team, and it was a big ride. And on the ride, 2 people came up to me, and they were coming up beside me, and they said, this is so much better riding as a group than it is riding alone. Time goes faster. The hills seem to be easier, right? There's just so much that happens when you do things together. Same thing is true when it comes to our service. I love the fact that we're gathered here today because it creates this we dynamic. This is us. This is not about me. It's not about a few of us. It's about all of us together. Those in this room, those in the video venue, those watching online, it's we over me. And I would say to everyone in this room today, everyone watching in, we need a we. Everyone needs a we. And I would say to you, if you're from a different church or you're a guest today, it does not have to be Grand Point Church. You just need a group somewhere. We need a church. I'm just going to take a moment here, and I want to address our 945 online audience. You know by now that we love you guys. We love you guys out there. And I know that many of you are watching from a distance. You're watching because you're unable to be here, but some of you are choosing to watch just in isolation. Listen, I love that you're tuning in today. I love that but you also need a we, right? You need a church. So somewhere, someplace within your journey, find a group. You don't have to maybe come here on Sunday morning, but find a group where you can belong to, because everyone needs a we. Doug Goldsmith, our discipleship director, does a great job at putting together group opportunities. There's this Fall Circles group that's starting here shortly. And if you're not a part of a group, like if you're out there and you're like, you know what, I do need a we, there are opportunities here for you to do this. Pick these up at the guest services or go online, and you'll find places where you can serve. See, we all need a we. You need a place where you can connect. Now, one of the things that Cressa said at the very beginning is that there are 336 people going out on Saturday. You know that's only a fraction of our church. It's only a fraction. Now, we're going to let you know how this goes, because maybe next year we can double that number. But in the meantime, I want to tell you about some other opportunities. Right now on our website, you can go on our website and you will find 380 plus positions that we're looking to fill. It takes a lot of people to lead Grand Point Church. That's at every campus. 380 open spots right now. Places where you can connect, places where you can serve. So I want you to, if you're missing this weekend, and I know not everyone could do it, someone came up to me very apologetically after the first service, and she said, I'm so sorry I couldn't sign up, but I'm helping my kids move this Saturday. I'm like, that's your service, right? That's your service. And some of you have the same things. There were conflicts. But listen, there are 380 open spots right now at Grand Point for you to serve. And you can jump into a place where you become community. Community. That invitation goes out to online, goes to everyone that's listening today. We need you to be part of us so that we can do this together. Finally, God's greatest puts worship over wealth. Worship over wealth. All that is to say, my goal is not to accumulate. My goal is to glorify God. In other words, the goal of my life is not just for me to be great, but it's to make God great. It's to make him great. The goal of my life isn't to achieve, it's not to accumulate, but to give our lives away just like the one whom we serve did. So what he did, he gave his life away. The goal of your life and mine is to make a difference in other people. And when you serve, it is one of the greatest acts of worship that you can give. Listen, our worship this morning in this place was amazing. It was amazing. And if you were engaged in worship this morning, you need to know that God liked that. God received that this morning as a sacrifice that was pleasing to him. But can I tell you what else is going to please him? Saturday is going to please him as well. Your acts of service will please him. Here's what it says in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15. Through Jesus, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of our lips that openly profess his name. Now watch this. And do not forget to do good and to share with others. For with such sacrifice, God is pleased. He's pleased with our service. And that service is our worship, but it's also our doing. It's moving out beyond the walls of this church and into community, serving people all around us. It's you choosing to serve within the church so that we can become better than just me. We are simply better together. Now, I want to do something that I've never done before as we wrap this up today. It's something that Pastor Rick Warren often did at Saddleback Church in California. It's something that Chris Hodges did at Highlands Church, and something that we're going to do for our sending. I'm now going to serve as the coach. We're getting ready to go out, right? This is the moment where we get on our feet, like we put our hands into the huddle. I'm not going to attempt to do that in this room this morning, but I am going to ask you to make a declaration today in unison. We're going to do this in unison. Some of you maybe have come from churches where this was part of the liturgy, where there was this sending and you did it together. We're going to do this together in unison, one voice. Those of you in the video venue, those watching online, I invite you to participate in this well, because this is our declaration. So everyone, to your feet. Here we go. This is it. Everyone to your feet, facing the screen. This is our declaration. We're going to do this together, saying, because God has called me to serve my generation, I will value worship over wealth, we over me, character over convenience, and service over status, and God's purposes over possessions, positions, popularity, and pleasure. To my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I say, however, whenever, wherever, and whatever you ask me to do, my answer in advance is yes. Wherever you lead and whatever the cost, I'm ready anytime, anywhere. I want to be used by you in such a way that on that final day, I'll hear you say, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on in and let the eternal party begin. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the week's message. We'd love to connect with you on social media, so give us a follow and be sure to check out our website, grandpoint.church/nextsteps.